So, I hope I've covered enough here in my modest little video to not only help you in the very beginning of the process of actually getting on, but also in a little bit about how to approach your first few games and how to think about it in a very, very broad sense. I'll go into plenty more detail in how to switch over to this game in further episodes, and there will be many further episodes, do not worry about that. I realise that Brood War isn't the easiest thing to approach. It can be very difficult to come into. A lot of what people see when they come onto the forums or anything is they see a lot of doom and gloom, a fair amount of arguing, but really behind all that there's a lot of people who really, really love to play Brood War and really want to support it. So don't be distracted by any of the rubbish you see, because really we're good at heart and we just want to encourage you and help you play some cool games, because this is a really, really, really awesome esport to be involved in. Alright, so, done with the talking bit. What I am now going to do is I am going to show you a really, really cool game of StarCraft. This isn't necessarily the most wildly skillful match. This isn't necessarily the most strategically diverse match you can come across, but it's really cool. It captures some of the atmosphere, the excitement, the history, and a few kind of basic concepts, but that's not really important in this game. This game is just to help you start to try and enjoy Brood War, and I will try and explain little bits and bobs as we go along, but basically I'll be leaving you pretty much to your own devices to enjoy this match. Just as an aside, right after I finished recording this, I suddenly remembered that I forgot to include a very important piece of information about Bisu and Yellow. Yellow had not played a televised game for some time, and having always been a fan favourite, this was a pretty big deal. Having been picked to face off against Bisu in this match, he was thoroughly expected to come to absolutely nothing in this game, as Bisu is one of the strongest Protoss vs Zerg players ever to live on this planet. So I just thought I'd throw in that little extra bit of information, because it makes this game a little bit extra more super awesome than it already is. Okay, cool, so hello and welcome to one of those things which I have been waffling about for ages and ages. This is a professional StarCraft Brood War game. As you can see, it is from Pro League last year, and this features two absolutely historical characters in our fantastic history. This is Yellow versus Bisu. Yellow is not to be confused with Yellow Yarnak, who is a disgraced match fixer, but he is one of the true old school original Brood War players. Bisu, of course, is the player who came up with the Bisu build, which is a famed Protoss vs Zerg build, which we're going to see him feature in this game. That there was Yellow playing in the fantastic Zerg on the right hand side of the map, and that there is Bisu playing as the fantastic Protoss on the left hand side of the map. The map is Heartbreak Ridge, which is a two-player map which features... Actually, I'm not going to go through all the match features because you don't need to know that right now. You just need to know what this is, and this is a game of Brood War. What that was is the crowd kind of take little things along. You're probably familiar with them from SC2. They're called cheerfuls, and they hold them up and they have little messages to the players, commentators, pretty much to whomever on them. So right away we can see Zerg mechanics looking pretty similar from the beginning, hatching away the drones, but the Protoss is already doing something crazy and unfamiliar to you. He is placing a pylon far outside his base, outside his natural expansion. That is because he is going to attempt the Bisu build, which is the absolute standard staple Protoss vs Zerg opening, invented by this very man here on the left hand side of your screen now. This build basically involves, I'm not going to go through it in depth particularly right now because you can look at it on Liquipedia and try it out for yourselves, but this involves what is known as a Forge Fast Expand. You place down the Forge on a particular supply, and very soon afterwards you place down cannons if necessary and a Nexus. This allows you to get far more of an economic foothold in the game than you otherwise would, and you're not relying on cheesy all-ins, which largely Protoss vs Zerg was revolving around before this rather clever opening was dreamed up. Further cheerfuls there. They do like to distract us while the game is still in its early stages. See a bit of micro going on, the probe darting in and out, trying to get a drone kill, which would actually be a pretty significant coup for him at this stage of the game, but it's not everything, of course. Yellow there in his full focus, Bisu also in his full focus. There we see a front-on view of the man himself. We can already see the Forge almost all the way warped in here. And oh, caught in the act. Put her down, get a room. Sorry, we can see the Forge already will be warped in, and he will probably be laying down 1 or 2 cannons to counteract what is apparently a Speedling build, which means, I think you'll probably know this already, but the Zerg is going to be getting Zergling speed nice and early. We can tell that because he has laid down a gas and is mining gas from that. That was very significant. Because he managed to kill off the probe extremely early. BC would be wanting to get far more scouting information than that in order to truly have any clue of what the Zerg is going to do. Zerg is one of the cheesiest races possible, especially against Protoss. There is a huge array of really, really horrible things they can do early on in the game, so that probe is really crucial. The Speedling build, you no longer get any sort of bonus for movement when you are moving on your creep. This works in a few different ways. This means that, of course, creep is not crept out onto the map in the same way, and also upgrades are much more significant for things like speed, and Zergling speed is one of the earliest you will see. So Bisu has laid down a couple of photon cannons, and you can see, oh, and we see a very fast lair there from Yellow. Do not be tricked into thinking that this is a standard game. This is absolutely not a standard game. A very fast lair going down from Yellow, which Bisu is unable to scout, and this is absolutely critical. Bisu is kind of edging a probe around there, but Yellow is, you see the Zergling speed kicking in there, so he's going to be unable to sneak a probe out, but he already snuck a probe out earlier. However, it could be pretty crucial if this Overlord manages to spot it. It'd be very advantageous for Yellow, and he would be able to block Bisu scouting this very cheesy build. I'm sure I don't need to tell you that if a cheese build is scouted, a cheese build is screwed. So it basically all revolves around this probe heading towards Yellow's base. You see the cybernetics core being laid down there, which means, of course, that Bisu is preparing to tech behind his safe wall of cannons gateway. The Sim City at the front there is also going to be something you're going to have to learn quite a lot about. The commentator is highlighting a very interesting point there, that Bisu has just scouted for a third base of Yellow's, so even before he gets to Yellow's base, he already has an inkling that something funny is going on. And this is just a little whiff of the importance of scouting, especially in Brood War. A lot of times in SC2 I've seen a lot of guesswork going on. I've seen a lot of mid-game army clashes straight up front, and you're going to have to be much more focused on scouting in Brood War right from the very beginning, and this requires a huge amount of multitasking as well. One thing you'll notice very quickly is that waypoints are not functioning in the same way, so you have to pay absolute paramount attention to your scout. You're going to have to be moving him around constantly. Waypointing your scout is the #1 way to make sure he dies really fast, so that's something else to stretch your multitasking from square one. See a little bit of Yellow trying to mine out minerals. You know, destructible rocks in StarCraft 2. This is a bit like it, apart from there's no actual mechanic built into Brood War, so they've come up with clever little ways to put interesting map quirks like that in. Now this is curious. We see Bisu's build diverging very strongly early in the game rather, to account for the cheese build which he has scouted. He's laying down lots of extra defense, and he has changed his tech path to one which will provide more immediate protection and more opportunities for harass rather than some kind of mid-game timing push, which would be vulnerable early on. Even more cannons being laid down there, but we can see that Yellow is clearly preparing something outside the back of Bisu's base, which Bisu is clearly not expecting at all. And then we see that he has loaded 2 Hydralisks, or maybe more, we didn't quite see, into those Overlords. But Bisu's first Corsair is now out, and he's going to go over there and he's going to scout those first 2 Overlords, which are heading into his base right at this very moment. But that Corsair is, of course, very slow at killing Overlords. It's very slow at killing anything, so these Overlords are going to land their units in, and the Corsair is beaten off. Now, this is another absolutely critical move by Yellow. He is hatching 2 Lurker eggs inside the Protoss base. Eggs, in case you're wondering, while they are still in the egg form, are extremely strong. Stronger than any unit. They have very high armor statistics. We see the Zerglings coming into the base, just trying to dart around, do any damage, take down the cannons, because Lurkers, once they hatch and burrow, they are invisible. They are burrowed units until Bisu has any detection. Cannons are, of course, natural detectors, but we do see the 2 Lurkers hatch out. He's chasing it with the probes, because this is a very high micro situation. He has to try and block these from getting close to his cannons. The Lurkers do burrow down and do the huge amount of splash damage in that massive line. That is your first taste of Lurker damage, doing a huge amount of damage. And he manages to burrow down in range of the cannons, and he's going to be able to do a massive amount of damage here, but these cannons may be able to get up in time, and Bisu may be able to use his zealots to beat off these lurkers. Very just. The lurker is forced to move back out of the range of the Nexus, the mineral line, and the cannon. Yellow is now in a bit of a tough spot, so he's going to have to try and pull out all the stops and really get his cheese going. We're going to see an interesting maneuver here. He takes the Overlord over the back of Bisu's natural expansion. He's surely going to try and drop another lurker in, but Bisu has it well covered by cannons. Yellow, is he going to lose another lurker? No, he manages to find the ideal position right in the middle of the ranges of the two cannons, and that is a perfect example of how a really intimate game knowledge and game sense can really help you in any situation.